Greetings. My name is Brother Scott, and I believe that with faith, courage, and discipline, we will prevail. In today's topic, we're going to continue on with our Building Your Dynasty playlist. And so last time we talked about knowing what to look for in a woman. Because if you're building your dynasty and you want to build that dynasty with someone, well, you need to know what to look for in that potential partner. And remember, we talked about looking at compatibility, looking at their reputation, and then just looking to make sure you're actually physically attracted to this potential partner. All right? And so now that we know what to look for in a woman, today's topic, we're going to talk about understanding the dating process. Okay? Understand. So this is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun one. Okay? I'm going to drop a lot of knowledge on you, so you got to pay attention to what I'm saying. All right. Understanding the dating process. First off, what is the purpose of a date? Well, the purpose of a date is to screen a potential partner for compatibility. Yes. So if you go back to the previous video where we talked about knowing what to look for in a woman, I talked about compatibility, right? And so when you go on that date, you're looking for compatibility with that woman. Okay? And since we already talked about it, you should know exactly what compatibility means because I've already talked about it. You should have saw the previous video before you saw this one where I talked about it, okay? So, one thing to remember. So, when you're screening her for compatibility, she is also screening you as well, okay? It's a two-way thing. So, you're looking for certain things and she's looking for certain things as well. What makes sense to her, what she deems is compatible with her and her lifestyle and her calling, if she has one, okay? And her way of life. All right? Use your dates to get to know each other and have fun. All right? The reason why I bring that up is because it's obvious, but when I previously talked about screening a potential partner, right? Screening the person that you're dating, oftentimes, guys will misinterpret that and they feel like, oh, I have to interview. I'm basically conducting an interview with this woman to make sure she's compatible with me. Like you're Sherlock Holmes or something. Like you're sitting there with a notepad and pen. Okay, so what year were you born? Okay. What hospital were you born in? Yeah, and then was it daytime or not? Like, no, man, you're not. No. Okay, it's not an interview, okay? But it is a screening process, okay? And it needs to be understood. The dates are about getting to know each other and having fun. Have fun on these dates, okay? Now, one thing you also need to do is make sure she feels comfortable around you, okay? And make sure you're comfortable around her too, all right? Because, especially nowadays, people getting set up on dates and people having nefarious thoughts and ideas about what to do as far as like when you get into a relationship, if they're going to, take from you, if they're going to take advantage of you, if they're going to manipulate you, you got to be careful, okay? And one way that you can make her feel comfortable is to be more receptive to her likes. Be more receptive to the things that she wants to do. And we're going to go into a lot more detail as far as what to do on the dates, where to go on the dates. We're going to go into a lot more detail later on in the video. or I'm sorry, later on, as I make more videos. But you want to make her feel comfortable around you, and vice versa. Make sure you feel comfortable around her. All right? Because if you watch the news, man, people do some crazy stuff on these dates, man. Okay? You don't want to end up chopped up, you know what I'm saying, in the back of a trunk, getting dumped off of a hilltop somewhere. Okay? So yeah, make sure you're comfortable and she's comfortable as well. Okay? Now, here's the fun part. So I have divided up 3 ways in which you can meet women. All right? And we're going to talk about each 3. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of each 3. And we're going to talk about the similarities and the differences of each 3. Okay? So the 3 ways, right, to meet women is meeting women via cold approach, meeting women via proximity approach, and then meeting women via online approach. Okay? So we have cold approach, proximity approach, and online approach. And I'm going to go over the pros and cons, similarities and differences of each of them. All right? This is going to be a bit in depth, so pay attention. First one we're going to talk about is a cold approach. What is a cold approach? A cold approach is when you ask a woman out on a date that you've never met in person. Okay? Again, a cold approach is when you ask a woman out on a date that you've never met, but in person, right? Face to face. All right? So let's talk about the pros and the cons of using a cold approach. Okay? So one of the pros is that you can display your confidence and personality from the very beginning. All right? If you go back in previous videos where I talked about what women are attracted to, what is the most attractive a trait in a man? Confidence, right? I said that in previous videos. So when you execute a cold approach, you get to display the confidence that you have right from the get-go, which is different from a proximity approach or online approach, which I will discuss in detail later. Okay, I'm going to discuss those in details later so you can understand the similarities and differences. But what you need to understand right now is that cold approach, boom, you get that confidence right there out in the open. Okay? Next thing, a next pro to a cold approach is if you get rejected, you probably won't ever see her again. Okay? Now, this is different from a proximity approach, which you're probably going to see this person after the rejection. Again, I'm going to get into details when I get to that point. But the point I'm trying to make now is you go up, you make a confident approach, a confident cold approach, and she says, no, I have a boyfriend, or no, thank you, I'm not interested. There's a good chance you probably won't run into that person ever again, which is good. Right? Because it won't be awkward seeing the same person again after you've been rejected, and it just makes a weird situation, right? Okay? And then the last pro of executing a cold approach to meet women is, well, she's unable to catfish you. What you see is what you get, which is different from an online approach, right? And when I say online approach, which I'll get to in a minute, that's like social media, dating apps, etc. This is awesome as far as cold approaching, because I'm telling you right now, I've used dating apps quite a bit back in the day. And I cannot tell you how many times I done got catfished, man. And it's not a good feeling when you show up and you show up on the date and the person not looking like what you expected them to look like. Yeah, man, a cold approach, what you see is what you get. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about the con of cold approaching, which is there's only one con, right? And it's pretty obvious. So the con to cold approaching is it can be embarrassing to get rejected in public. It's a little embarrassing. If you're not used to being rejected and you go and make a cold approach, you know, whether you're at the store, you're at the mall, and she says, no, I'm not interested, or I have a boyfriend or whatever, and a whole bunch of people turn around and look like, dang, ooh, dang. She left that man on red. Damn. You know what I'm saying? Like, that sucks, man. All right? Getting embarrassed in cold, when you execute a cold approach, it sucks. All right? But just remember, compare them with the pros, all right? And then you see what I'm saying? And you can determine if that's a risk, right, that you need to make. Getting embarrassed if you get rejected. Okay? And we're going to talk about getting rejected later in the video. All right, next approach. So we just talked about cold approach. Next approach is meeting women via proximity approach. All right, now what exactly is a proximity approach? This is the term that I create. I don't hear anybody talking about this, but this is a term that I created, all right? So a proximity approach is when you ask a woman out on a date that you interact with on a regular basis, okay? So this is like friends, or maybe friends of friends, or a coworker, or a university classmate, or somebody that's a member of your club, you know, whether you have like an anime club or a pickleball club, et cetera, et cetera. This is a proximity approach, okay? Now, let's talk about the pros and the cons, okay? Now, one of the first pro of executing a proximity approach is the interaction is more organic than a cold approach or an online approach. It's more organic. Remember, this is somebody that you know already. This is somebody that you're somewhat familiar with. Maybe you don't know, maybe you're not friends, right? Because I said friends is a part of that proximity approach. But maybe you guys are coworkers, and so you know a little bit about each other, you've interacted with each other, maybe you're university classmates. So the interaction is a lot more organic, right? Versus an online approach or a cold approach where you don't know the person at all, okay? You know nothing about them, and they probably know nothing about you too, okay? So the next pro is you can gauge her level of attraction based on past interactions. So this is cool because if you're making an approach and this is somebody that you kind of already have a good rapport with, you kind of already can tell she has a little bit of attraction to you. Like she laughs at your jokes, you know, maybe you guys go over to each other's house and play video games. Maybe you guys have a really tight social group and you pretty much have a good feeling of how she feels about you. That's a pro of a proximity approach. You don't get that with the cold approach or online approach. You understand? Okay. Next pro is so this is really good. All right. Next pro to executing a proximity approach is she is less likely to test you to determine your financial standing, your social status, or your confidence, since she will already have an idea of where you stand based on past observations. This is going to prevent unnecessary testing, okay? So I talked about, in my video about understanding female attraction, I talked about how women can use shit tests, right? To test whether or not you're confident. They can also do this as well to test and see, you know, how much bread you're making, how much money you're making, or to determine your level of status, okay? If you're executing a proximity approach, depending on how close you are, well, she already knows these things, or she has a good understanding or idea of where you line up as far as your financial security, as far as your status. as far as how confident you are, because she can judge that stuff based on your past interactions. All right? You don't get that with the cold approach or online approach. This is a good pro, okay? Yeah. So there you go. Unnecessary testing. That is a blessing, because a lot of guys just don't really understand the shit test or the confidence test, and they get very frustrated, right? Well, proximity approaches help to decrease the amount of testing you're going to have if you guys are able to, if you're able to secure that date. You understand? Or even during the approach phase, because the testing starts from the beginning sometimes, right? Before you even go on that first date. It can start during the setting up the date part, okay? Now, we're going to talk about the cons. The cons of a proximity approach. All right. One con is after a rejection, so if you get rejected, you know, let's say, she says I got a boyfriend, or I'm not interested, or whatever, okay? After a rejection, your next interaction with her might be a little awkward. Yeah. So if you guys are part of the same club, let's say you guys are part of an anime club where, you know, a few times a week, you guys get together, you guys talk about anime, you guys watch anime, you guys discuss, you know, the new and upcoming anime coming out of Japan or whatever, right? And let's say you ask a girl out on a date one day within that club, and she says no. Well, the next time you guys convene for that anime club, it can be a little bit awkward. You know, you just got rejected, and you know, you guys are meeting back up again, and it can be awkward, okay? And so that's one of the cons of executing a proximity approach. And you can compare this with the cold approach or the online approach, where I said before in the cold approach, if you get rejected, there's a good chance, if you get to know this person, you'll probably never see them again. But with the proximity approach, if it's somebody within your proximity, if it's a friend or a friend or a coworker, you're going to see them again. So that's one of the cons. All right, so next con. So after a breakup, so this is someone that you, in your proximity, and you asked her out on a date, you guys start dating, and you guys enter the relationship. So after, let's say after you guys break up, okay, and the relationship has ran its course. After a breakup, you may still have to interact with her due to being in the same social circle. Now, this is a bit more severe than, you know, just a plain old rejection. If she rejects you from the beginning and tells you, oh, I have a boyfriend or whatever, yeah, it's going to be awkward, but you can get over that after you guys come together a few more times. Maybe a week or a couple of weeks later, things could probably go back to normal after a rejection. But after a breakup, you've been in a relationship with this girl, you've been in a relationship with this woman, and you have feelings for her, and now you have to still interact with her because you guys have the same social circle. That sucks, man. You know, if you guys were, let's go back to the club thing. If you guys were a part of the same club, well, there's a possibility that if you guys break up, you might have to stop going to the club, because it may make things difficult on the people within the club. They may have to choose sides, or maybe you know, because she's not talking to you, some of her friends within the club don't talk to you anymore because she don't talk to you no more. And so it's a lot more severe than just getting a rejection from somebody that's in your proximity. Okay? Next thing, after a breakup, she could share your faults with other women in your shared social circle. Yeah, this sucks, man. So let's say, for example, you're scared of the dark. some crazy, like you're scared of the dark. And let's say you gotta sleep with a nightlight before you go to bed. Well, now she's privy to that knowledge because there's a good chance you guys have spent the night over each other's houses. And so now that she's privy to, or she's aware that you're afraid of the dark, now she can share that with other women. Yeah, you understand? And maybe she was cool with it. It wasn't that big of a deal for her. And now all these other women that she shared this information with, they they know your dirty little secret. But in all seriousness, no, it could be something more serious than that, and that's just one of the cons of being in a relationship with someone that you're in close proximity with. All right? And then the last con is after a breakup, she could badmouth you or lie about you to give you a bad reputation. So this is similar to what I just said before about sharing your faults. Sometimes women and men, they can be very vindictive when a breakup happens, right? And they just start straight up lying about you, lying about who you are, what kind of a person you are, how you treated them, and it could have some validity based on how long they've been with you. If you've been with this person for half a year or a year, and y'all break up, and she says, "Oh, you don't treat women right, or you're misogynistic," or whatever she says, and it's a straight up lie, there's a chance somebody could believe that crap, and that's unfortunate. And so, that's a con of having close proximity with somebody and dating them. Okay? All right, and so the last approach when meeting women is an online approach, okay? So what is an online approach? An online approach is when you use social media or dating apps to set a date with a woman. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. Now we're going to talk about the pros and cons of an online approach, okay? So pros. One of the pros is you have access to many women, right? Especially, so when you get into those dating apps, whether it's Tinder, whether it's Bumble, what have you, plenty of fish, guess what? You have almost an infinite amount of women you can look at their profile and determine whether or not you're attracted to them. And you have a wider access of women versus if you went out and just was executing nothing but cold approaches, you understand? Or even with your proximity approaches. There's only so many people in your proximity, right? But if you're executing approaches online with dating apps and social media, well, there's infinite amount of people online. Not infinite, but there's probably going to be more people you can reach out to online than with a cold approach or a proximity approach. You understand? So yes, having access to many women is a huge pro. The next thing is, and this is a big one, it's convenient. It's convenient if you don't have a lot of free time to get out of the house or socialize. So let's say you're pursuing your calling, you're building your dynasty, and you don't have a lot of free time to go out and go to a lounge or go to a club or hang out with your buddies and go somewhere all the time, right? If that's the case, then online approach might be ideal for you because it's convenient. You can, swipe from the comfort of your own home. You can hop in the DMs of somebody's, DMs from the comfort of your own home. You understand? And so it's convenient. That's a big pro. All right. And then one big pro also is rejection is not as painful. So if you swipe right on somebody, they swipe right on you, and you guys get to chatting and stuff, and you're starting to set up a date, and then at some point she decides, oh yeah, actually on second thought, I'm not interested, but it was nice to talk to you. Well, it's not as painful, right? It doesn't hurt as bad when you get rejected in public, with a cold approach, Or it doesn't hurt as bad when you get rejected with a proximity approach and you got to see that person again the next day, right? Rejection is not as painful. So that's a good pro. And that's why a lot of guys don't mind getting on these dating apps and stuff, because for them, it's very little risk involved as far as rejection is concerned. Like, yeah, you're going to get rejected, but as far as the embarrassment, okay, and that hurt you get when you get rejected, it doesn't feel as bad on a online approach, okay? Now, we're going to talk about the cons. All right, the cons of an online approach. Well, one of the cons is she will primarily evaluate you based on your profile and your initial DMs. Now, this sucks because you may have a wonderful personality. You may be a very confident individual, but she may not be able to experience that if you're approaching with an online approach, right? If you're on Tinder or if you're on Bumble or whatever the case is, and you're just in the DMs talking, or the only thing she can see initially is your profile, she don't get that confidence. She don't get that confidence that you may have, that you may be able to use and put on display, right? To raise that attraction with that woman. You don't have that. You understand? At least not right away. Now, maybe you can set up a video call at some point, but you have to get to the point where she's comfortable doing some type of video call or something along those lines, all right? So when she only can primarily at the beginning look at your profile and in the DMs that you guys are sending each other back and forth, that kind of puts you at a disadvantage versus a guy that's going up and making a confident cold approach or a proximity approach to the same woman, okay? So yeah, and the next con is there will be there's going to be more difficulty when you're trying to display your confidence. So I just talked about that. Again, she's not going to be able to feel that confidence, feel that aura, that swag, whatever the kids are calling it nowadays. She won't be able to feel it right away. So that's a con. Another con is you will have to compete with other guys in her DMs. So this sucks, man, because anybody can DM anybody at any time, right? You can DM a celebrity if you wanted to right now. Now, are they going to actually respond to you? Probably not if you're a nobody. But this sucks because, again, it's very little risk to go and hop in somebody's DMs. And so if you think you're the only one hopping in her DMs, think again, especially if this is an attractive woman. So depending on how attractive a woman is, she could have hundreds of guys in her DMs every month. You understand? And so you got to compete with that. And it sucks, man, because again, guys, there's so many guys that are willing to get into her DMs because a rejection is not going to be as painful. And so by the time, she can get to your DM, she got to get through these 200 other ones that came before you. And some of these guys have blue check marks on their profile and things like that. So yeah, that's a con. And then the last thing is, and I mentioned this before, a big con of online approach, using an online approach is having to deal with catfishing and scammers, right? Because everybody on these profiles aren't real people, all right? And some of these people get very good and very proficient at running these fake ass profiles. Next thing you know, you get catfish, or even worse, you get scammed. All right, so that sucks. Okay, so we talked about the three different types of approaches. We talked about the cold approach, we talked about the proximity approach, and we talked about the online approach. Now, before we leave, we're going to talk about how to deal with a rejection. How to deal with rejection. Now, first point, expect it. You expect it. It is a necessary risk to get the partner that you want. Okay? One concept that I'm gonna hit very consistently over and over and over again as I do these videos. I'm going to talk about taking calculated risk. All right? And if you want the woman that you want, you got to ask her out, man. You have to ask her out. You got to be able to make that approach, whether it's cold, online, or proximity, and ask her out on the date. And guess what? There's a chance she's going to say no, or I have a boyfriend, or whatever excuse she can say to not hurt your little feelings when she rejects you. Understand that it's a risk to get the partner that you want. Okay? Anytime you see a couple and you see a guy with a very beautiful, very attractive woman, very accomplished woman, he had to ask her out, man. So guess what? You're not special. Okay? And if you're a confident man, you'll be fine. All right? You'll get rejected. You'll get rejected. It happens. It's a part of the dating process, right? But yeah, just expect it. It's a risk that you need to take. You have to take. All right? Understand, my next point, understand that women have their preferences and that's okay. So women have their preferences just like we have preferences. Maybe you like bigger women. Maybe you like smaller women, shorter women, taller women, women of different ethnicities, different looks, phenotypes, whatever. Women have the same thing. And when you make that approach, maybe you don't fit that description, that preference. That's fine, dog. That's okay. All right? And then rejection, one thing about rejection is you will become unfazed by rejection over time. Eventually, over time, you make a cold approach here, you make a proximity approach here. Eventually, like, rejection still sucks. It still sucks to get rejected, but you'll become unfazed. After a while, you'll accept it. Like I said, you'll accept it, right? And you'll expect it. Okay? It's just like anybody that works in sales. So some of you that are watching this video works in sales. And when you're trying to make that deal, when you're trying to get that client, you're trying to get that person to buy that product or whatever, not everybody you approach is going to purchase that product. And so you'll get rejected. But guess what? You know that you'll have another shot. You'll have another opportunity, right? When that right customer comes in and you're able to use your skill set in order to make that purchase, the rejection you start to really not care about them over time. They're not that big of a deal. You understand? And the same thing can be applied when you're making these approaches and asking women out on a date. Okay? All right, so today we talked about the dating process. We talked about the purpose of a date. We talked about meeting women via cold approach. We talked about meeting women via proximity approach, meeting women via online approach, and then we also talked about how to deal with rejection. Whew, all right, this was a long one. All right, so with that being said, if you haven't already, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and donate. And always remember, with faith, courage, and discipline, we will prevail.